if I told you that Jaws is not a movie about a shark, and that The Exorcist is not a movie about a demon. These films are masterpieces, not because of the monster, but because of the people. And this is the fatal mistake, the one catastrophic misunderstanding that is killing the modern horror. Studios have forgotten that we don't fall in love with the gimmick, we fall in love with the stakes. They're so obsessed with recreating the monster that they have completely forgotten how to create the humanity. This is the assembly line of modern horror. Take a beloved classic, dust it off, and pump out a sequel that promises to go back to its roots. But most of the time, it just feels hollow, empty, a ghost of the movie we once loved. And with the new I Know What You Did Last Summer now in theaters, we're about to see if Hollywood has learned anything at all. Because these sequels almost always fall for that exact, same reason. They mistake the gimmick for the soul. They think we loved Final Destination for the elaborate death scenes, maybe a little. Not the suffocating psychological dread of knowing you can't escape your fate. They think we loved I Know What You Did Last Summer for the man with a hook. Not the gut-wrenching guilt of 4 kids whose lives were destroyed by one mistake. They copy the weapon, but they forget the wound. In this video, I'm giving you the blueprint. We'll dissect how these sequels confuse the genre with the real drama. How they could copy the concept but forget the human stakes. And how they use nostalgia as a cheap substitute for a story that actually has something to say. By the end of this, you will never look at a horror sequel the same way again. Alright, let's just start with the first delusion that kills these sequels. Confusing the genre with the actual drama. And our prime exhibit is the original 1997 I Know What You Did Last Summer. When you think of this movie, you probably think of this. Slick 90s slasher, but that's just the packaging. The secret to this movie's success, the reason it became a classic, is that it was written by Kevin Williamson, the same mind behind Scream, and it is, first and foremost, a high-stakes teen melodrama that gets hijacked by a horror movie. Don't believe me? Let's look at the evidence. Forget the horror for a second. The first 10 minutes of this movie are pure teen drama.
Mamas and daddies worked hard. We're mighty proud of her.
Look at her. She was born for this.
I had no idea her breasts were so...
It's all about their dreams, their anxieties, the future they're about to build, and the relationships they're terrified of losing. There is no horror. There's only the promise of life, which makes what happens next so much more tragic. When Julie gets that note, the real terror isn't the threat of a killer. It's the horror of being exposed. It's the dread of her perfect future being destroyed by her past mistakes. The letter doesn't just threaten her life. It threatens her identity. That is a psychological story, not a slasher one. And look at this scene. This is not 2 guys fighting off a killer. This is a raw emotional explosion between 2 friends who have been torn apart by their shared trauma. The real villain in this scene isn't the fisherman, it's the lie they've been living for a year. The horror works because the drama works. You see, the hook is just the consequence. The kills are just a punctuation at the end of a sentence about guilt, secrets, and broken friendships. And this is the fatal mistake a new sequel will almost certainly make. It will forget the teen soap opera. It will forget the emotional weight. It will just give us a soulless, generic slasher with a guy in a raincoat, completely missing the wounded human heart that made the original beat. So, these sequels forget the drama. The second delusion is even more seductive. It's when a sequel falls in love with its own gimmick and completely forgets what made that gimmick scary in the first place. For this, we need to talk about the brilliant and then tragic story of the Final Destination franchise. The first film was a masterpiece of existential terror. Its concept wasn't just people die in cool ways, it was about the suffocating, paranoid horror of knowing that an invisible intelligent force is hunting you. The universe itself has become your stalker. The real horror in the original wasn't the death themselves, it was the waiting. It was the agonizing tension of watching the world for signs. It was the details, the plot and the story in every detail in that. A leaky bottle, a sudden breathe, a crack in a coffee mug. The film weaponized the mundane. It made you terrified of your own bathroom. The fear came from the idea, the dread, and the helplessness. And then this happened. The sequels forgot the psychology and fell in love with its spectacle. They mistook the what for the why. The franchise was no longer about the dread of the unseen, it was a showcase for elaborate Rob Goldberg death machines. The characters became anonymous meat. We weren't scared for them. We were just waiting to see how the next kill would top the last one. The films turned from psychological horror into a bloody, empty action franchise without the details and the plot line and even the character arcs. This is the trap the new I Know What You Did Last Summer can fall into. It can become so obsessed with its gimmick, the fisherman, the hook, the jump scares, it forgets to build the quiet human stakes that make us actually care if the characters live or die. And finally, we come to the last mistake, the most cynical trick in the entire studio playbook. When a sequel has no new ideas, no real drama, no compelling stakes, it resorts to using your own memories against you. It resorts to the empty drug of nostalgia. The great horror movies are always a product of their time. They are a snapshot of our collective fears. I Know What You Did Last Summer could only have existed in the 90s, in my opinion. It was a story born in the last moments before the internet took over our lives. An era where a secret could convincingly be buried, where your past wasn't a permanent, searchable digital tattoo. The entire plot hinges on the agonizing analog fear of a secret getting out. That fear means something completely different today. And this is the laziest trick of all. Instead of asking, what does this story mean in 2025? A failing sequel just brings back the old faces. It gives you a cheap 2-second dopamine hit of recognition. Hey, I remember them. And hopes that's enough to distract you from the fact that there is no new story to tell. They're not bringing back a character, they're bringing back a ghost, a hollow echo of something you once loved. But nostalgia isn't a story, it's memory. And a movie made of nothing but memories is already dead on arrival. So, there it is, the blueprint for failure. The 3 fatal mistakes that turn beloved classics into hollow ghosts. They forget the human drama, they fall in love with their own gimmick, and they use our nostalgia as a cheap substitute for a real story. So, when you go to the theater this weekend to watch the new I Know What You Did Last Summer, I want you to watch it like an analyst, like a professional. Don't just ask yourself, is this a scary? Ask the real questions. Ask yourself, did they earn my emotional investment? Are the characters just meat for the grinder? And does this story have a single compelling reason to exist in 2025? But that's my framework. I want you to be the judge. Come back to this video after you have seen it and give me your diagnosis in the comments. Did it fall into the trap? Or did it, by some miracle, find a soul? I want to read your arguments. And if you want to see what happens when a film gets every single one of these things right, when it creates a masterpiece of psychological dread that is anything but hollow, then you need to watch my deep dive into why The Silence of the Lambs is not a thriller, but a tragedy. The link will be right here because it's my next video. I'll see you in the comments.